All right, and welcome everybody to another edition of Infinite Sports here on this Friday, this Football Friday. I'm Kenneth Grunfelder along with Ben Upson. It's been a few weeks, but we're back to preview the championship games in the NFL. Also, we did want to talk about, Ben wanted to talk about it a little bit as well, and we're going to do that. Talk about the national championship game as Ohio State defeated Notre Dame. First off, Ben, as I always like to ask you when we record, how are you today on this Friday?
Feeling great, Kenny. We're coming to the end of another NFL season, which is hard to believe. College football is now in the rear view, in the books, as they say. And yeah, here we are. We got two action packed NFL conference championship games to get through. Or as we will say later on, Domingo de Campeonata in
Yep,
Spanish.
there we go. And you nailed it. So we are going to talk about those games, but I know you wanted to touch upon the national championship game. So Ohio State, they defeated Notre Dame 34-23. And Ohio State dominated in the first half. I think it got to as much as, I think it was 31-7. And then Notre Dame did make things interesting towards the end of the game. And then Will Howard hit Jeremiah Smith on that big pass play I think it was on 3rd and 11. And Notre Dame sent the house. Um, Smith makes the catch. They kick a field goal. They go up by 2 scores, and then that was the final score there. Um, but really, for me, in short, Ohio State was the better team going into this game, and they played really well throughout the college football playoff. And I got to be honest, really love the new format. If we had like the traditional 14 playoff, Ohio State doesn't win the national championship game, especially because of what happened against Michigan. A lot of people were down on them after that loss. That was an ugly game, low scoring. Michigan plants the flag, and everybody just everybody was all over Ohio State after that loss. But they beat up on Tennessee, they beat up on Oregon, which I myself and many others picked them to win the whole thing. And I thought once Ohio State won that game, I was like, this team's going to win the whole thing. And they played a close game with Texas. You had that signature play by Jack Sawyer returning the sack fumble of Quinn Ewers. And then they get to the national championship game and they beat Notre Dame. But you got to give Notre Dame a lot of credit too, because they also had a bad loss earlier this season against Northern Illinois. But Marcus Freeman did a nice job. He's really changed the culture of that team, and they they were pretty good. And I was really impressed by the opening drive of the national championship game because they had the ball for almost the entire first quarter, but they weren't going to be able to do that throughout the whole game. And they did fall behind, but you got to give them credit for fighting back and making the game a little bit more interesting. And they came up a little bit short. And Marcus Freeman, there's some interest from NFL teams, so maybe at some point, he goes to the pros and coaches. We'll see. But overall, I mean, the game obviously could have been better, but the better team won here. And myself and whoever some people that are listening to this, we went to Ohio State to watch them play Nebraska, so we were just a little tiny bitty piece of Ohio State season, which is pretty cool. That I could sit here and say that I saw the national champions play live at one point during the year, even though that game they didn't play their best game either. But what were your impressions of that game, Ben?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take a look at the season as a whole in terms of the entire snapshot, I guess, if you want to put it that way, Ohio State was the best team in this playoff format. And honestly, coming into the season, they were one of the best teams on the radar of, everybody trying to forecast who the national champion would be. And between getting Will Howard, their quarterback from Kansas State, and then Quinshawn Judkins, who transferred in at the running back position from Ole Miss, those were the two key differences with this football team. And Ryan Day, as head coach, definitely has a lot of pressure taken off his shoulders now, without a doubt. I think between what's happened in the past, with Ohio State never winning the big game in the playoff, or getting the wins over Michigan, it was always a lot of criticism on his shoulders. And he's had to take that weight with him for the, I believe, 6 seasons now that he's been the Ohio State head coach. And you could see in that post game on Monday, Kenny, that all that pressure came right off when Ohio State won this football game. And to think of where not just Ohio State, but Notre Dame also, where both of these teams came from, with a couple of blemishes on their resume this season, like Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. I can't remember if I've ever seen a football program lose to a low tier Division I program as a 4-touchdown favorite, no less, in that game. Win 13 in a row and get all the way to the national championship, taking out Penn State and Indiana,
Georgia,
and Ohio State en route to a national championship. It's just really incredible what Notre Dame did. While on the other side, you had Ohio State, who got into an ugly scene in that Michigan game with the flag planting and all of that chaos. And all of a sudden, they get that second loss, and everyone's like, well, they're not going to the Big Ten championship. Are they going to be able to still get in? The answer ultimately ended up being yes. They certainly had enough on their resume to get in this new system. As you said, though, in a 14 format, never would have happened. But Ohio State and Notre Dame both had interesting seasons and really turned them around for the better when they faced some really tough adversity. And the other thing, too, with Ohio State, they were the best team on the field. They were. They had a lot of seniors. They had some incredible offensive weapons that Notre Dame just didn't really have. I mean, and granted, we saw the birth of Jaden Greathouse in the playoff games for Notre Dame. Played fantastic against Penn State and Ohio State in these last two games. But Ohio State had Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka, Carnell Tate, Quinshon Judkins, Will Howard, and the list keeps going on and on. They had a lot of weapons. That was just unfortunately too much for Notre Dame to contain. I was thinking that Ohio State would have probably won this game right around 10 points, and I was kind of right there. It was 34-23, but it got really close. I mean, you cannot discredit Notre Dame for at least fighting back in this football game and making it interesting late, because Ohio State definitely got conservative, and they thought they had won the game, honestly. I think when it was 31-7 in the third quarter. So they really changed around their game plan and whatnot. But for all the seniors that wanted to come back to that program after all the Michigan losses and the pain and suffering that Ohio State had of missing out on these big time opportunities, it all paid off this year. And even though people will say, well, this was a $20 million roster, of course Ohio State should have won. It doesn't really matter. In this landscape now with NIL, all these teams around Ohio State certainly had rosters that were just as good, if not as good, to win a national championship. So no matter what people will say about college sports turning into pro sports now with all the NIL and all the money that's getting dished out to these kids, Ohio State still had a really incredible path to this national championship. I mean, they had to beat Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame. That's not an easy path either. Both of these teams were battle tested in this new 12-team format, which, like I said, I think it should be back and stay for the foreseeable future. The one thing I would change is keep the seeds where they are. Like, instead of giving the conference winners the automatic buys, I think you should just go the straight 1 through 12, personally. But that's my only gripe about it. Either way, it was a fun national championship game, even though it looked like it was going to be a blowout. And
it wasn't like when Georgia blew out TCU a couple of years ago.
Well, believe it or not, this was the biggest spread in a national championship since that Georgia TCU game. TCU was 13.5-point underdogs. Notre Dame was 8.5 when the line closed. Either way, though, congratulations to Ohio State on what was a very well-deserving championship run.
And I agree with those sentiments. So, all right, we're going to now transition over to the NFL. So we are in the conference championship games, and as Ben said before, would you like to repeat what you said before once again for the audience?
Yeah, wait, let's get the translator up again.
I put you on this.
Championship Sunday, which in Spanish is Domingo de Campeonato.
So there you have it. So we'll start off with the NFC Championship game. We got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on, get ready for this, the Washington Commanders. That's right. And I got to tell you, Ben, I had to go back and rewatch me break down their schedule going into the year on my GSMC show. And I had this team around 4 to 5 wins. And I just kept saying, Dan Quinn, not really a fan, especially with how things ended in Atlanta. And then, the playoff game against the Packers when he was the defensive coordinator for Dallas, and some of the moves they made, like, they brought in Austin Eckler and Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz. I was like, yeah, I mean, they're veteran players, but I don't really know what they're going to do. And on top of that, Jayden Daniels is a rookie. How is this all going to come together? And they exceeded all my expectations, and they ended up finishing in second in the NFC East. They've beaten the Eagles this year, so this is the rubber match. This is the third time these two teams are going to be playing against each other, and they each won um, a matchup, the previous matchups between each other. And I was surprised. I really was with how everything kind of came together for them. At the trade deadline, they went out and they traded for Marshawn Lattimore to bolster that secondary. And really, I think, other than coaching, I think the biggest reason why this team is in the position that they're in right now is because of the quarterback play. And that's something I did say when breaking down their schedule. Let's see how the quarterback play is. Like, how is Jayden Daniels going to elevate this team? And he's likely going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And he has been awesome. And the other thing, too, is with all these teams that we have remaining in the conference championship games, none of these teams have turned it over in the playoffs so far. And, in that game against the Buccaneers, which hurt me a little bit because I wanted to see Baker Mayfield do something this year. And, that fumble in that game proved to be very costly, kind of made all the difference in the game because if Baker doesn't fumble there, who knows what happens throughout these playoffs. But, they kept converting on fourth downs, not just in that game, but against the Lions too. And they benefited from the Lions just constantly turning the ball over, and they pulled off the upset there. They didn't punt until I think the fourth quarter. It was unbelievable. And these throws that Jayden Daniels is making, the one to De'Ami Brown last week, it's just they are playing with a lot of confidence right now. And then on the other side with the Eagles, this was a team that I was right about because I said this team is going to be the team that we saw in 2022, not the team that we saw towards the end of last year. And, obviously people have their complaints with how the passing game has been, but their defense, I think, is better than what it was a couple of years ago. And look at the running game. Saquon Barkley, I mean, he has been unbelievable for this Eagles team. He has been a difference maker. And that's why, like, when we talk about the passing game struggling, it really doesn't matter when you got Saquon Barkley just running all over teams. We saw that again against the Rams last week. And he's had two very good games against Washington this year. And he's had a good career numbers against Washington. So, it's going to be an interesting game. I think both games that we have here, obviously the AFC Championship game, I think is the bigger matchup of the two just because of the names. But this game right here is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I'm curious to see how it goes. I think it will be a close game. And you also got to remember that both quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts got a concussion in the previous matchup. And then the matchup before that, Jayden Daniels was dealing with a little bit, I think, of a rib issue early on in the season. So he wasn't 100% on that Thursday night. So, and now Hurts is coming in banged up because he hurt his knee in the game against the Rams. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think this is going to be a tight game. I'd like to get your thoughts, though, on what you see, how you see this matchup playing out.
Very exciting. Eagles Commanders was definitely not the NFC Championship I had on my bingo card. But, well, I mean, I figured the Eagles would be here, but certainly not the Commanders. Preseason, I had said that the Lions would be the NFC champions and go to the Super Bowl.
I said that too.
I think a lot of people did. And look at us, we're all wrong. Because one thing that I think the Washington Commanders did in that game last Saturday was that team went in there with a lot of confidence and belief. And Dan Quinn has really built one heck of a culture there. I mean, he's an incredible coach. He really is. And I think it's interesting, Kenny. You said you had them at 4 or 5 wins in the preseason. I think that was a little bit harsh. I was thinking they'd get 7, maybe 8. I was thinking they'd be, kind of closer to a 500 team, but I didn't think they'd make the wild card.
I think it had a lot to do with the defense because last year the defense was horrendous.
It was,
especially the secondary.
Yeah, and when they went out and got Lattimore, like you said, they traded for Lattimore. That was a big addition, and it really certainly helped them here down the stretch. One thing that is actually an absolute, shame is that Dan Quinn, to me, should get Coach of the Year now, if we count the postseason. But Kevin O'Connell will get it because it's a regular season award, and despite the atrocity that the Vikings put together in their final 2 games of the season against this Lions team and against the Rams, I mean, the Vikings had a ridiculously good season.
They had 4 losses, and they came against those teams.
Yeah, and that was another team who was expected to have 6, probably 7 wins this season, and they ended up being a contender. Which now, looking back at that Vikings game, it's like, wow, maybe the Vikings were that bad, when they went up against the Lions, or Did the Lions just pour all their energy out in that game to, to get the 1 seed and get the bye? I mean, we'll never know. I mean, I would like to think that the Vikings were a great team this season, but maybe
I think
not.
they were. I think it's just, the offensive line also struggled, and I think Sam Darnold was a little too amped up for the regular season finale. But for both that game and the playoff game against the Rams, you could also tell that he was holding on to the ball too long as well.
It was
But
very indecisive.
yeah, it was. I don't think you could definitely put blame on Sam Darnold, but also there has to be blame on the offensive line too, because the Rams sacked him 7 times or 9 times. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and C.J. Stroud just got sacked 8 times against the Chiefs. So I mean, you can't blame Sam Darnold for all of that. But
yeah, a lot of people are getting sacked this time of year. Anyways, back to this entire game. Washington went in there and played confident. I think the Lions definitely weren't. They weren't necessarily prepared for, I think, what Washington was going to bring to the table. And I mean, I totally disrespected Washington. I thought the Lions would win this game by 2 scores plus, and would just run it up offensively, and Washington wouldn't be able to keep up. I was completely wrong. Their defense got the 3 turnovers, which also significantly swung the game in their direction, including the pick 6 by I think it was Quan Martin.
They had 5 takeaways because Jared Goff fumbled, and then Jameson Williams threw a pick when they did that. They tried to do that trick play.
Right, that's true. They
should not have done that, especially when you're losing the game and your defense can't get a stop.
Yeah, that was an awful call. So you're right. They did end up having 5 takeaways in that game. And let's just be real. It was going to catch up the Lions at some point. I think this is obviously part of the reason for their downfall. The defense was just completely shorthanded, really, for much of the last month plus, and it finally caught up to the Lions. It really did. You can only stretch your guys out so far when you get that deep in your defensive reserves, and I think the Lions just partially hit a wall in this game from losing all of those players and just the amount of stress and intensity that they had gone through the entire season playing in a really ultra competitive division. And I still don't care what anybody says. As much as a bye week is very beneficial for the playoffs, sometimes it can really throw off your rhythm, just having that week of not playing. And I wonder if that was part of it too. But regardless, now, the Lions go into this offseason with a lot of questions because Ben Johnson is now gone to the Chicago Bears as their next head coach, and the Jets just hired Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator. You lose both your coordinators in the span of, 48 hours, I think it was, and now you're on.
And more guys on the staff are going to be leaving too.
And they will. They absolutely will. I mean, it's great for them that they're getting these opportunities, but now Dan Campbell's got a lot of, coordinator positions that he's going to have to work around, and
we're going to have to see what he's really made of.
Fill in for next season. But regardless, though, back to Washington. This team doesn't care about the outside noise. Dan Quinn has said that multiple times at his press conferences this week, last week, throughout the entire season, basically, is that they try and ignore the outside narrative. Jayden Daniels also just proved on Saturday that he's the real deal. This guy is going to be a threat in the NFC going forward, and the Commanders might become a regular threat as he continues to mature and improve. And something I'm really excited to see in this game this weekend is how will Jayden Daniels, affect this Eagles defense? I really wonder what this game plan is going to be against a really good front 7 Eagles team. And, Jayden Daniels has been using his legs a lot this season too. And I think he's going to have to do that again to really help propel this team into a winning position on Sunday. But I'm very excited to see what this kid can keep doing. And just a reminder, Kenny, I'm pretty sure rookie quarterbacks are, I think it's either 0-4. I think it might be 0-5 in conference.
Yeah, I think it's 0-5.
So no rookie quarterback has ever led their team to the Super Bowl. Jayden Daniels is on the precipice of history on Sunday.
Yeah, and that definitely would be something. And it's just, for me, if the Commanders win this game, it's like, wow, we got an NFC team or a team representing the NFC that I had winning 4 games going into the year.
Also, Eagles side of things. Look, people know I had thoughts about Saquon Barkley.
Oh, you did. That's right. You were offended.
We're not going to go back to that. But let me just say this. In 2 games against the Los Angeles Rams this season, Saquon Barkley tallied 52 carries, 460 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns. Is that any good? Look, this is why, obviously, I haven't heard an update actually on Jalen Hurts today, but it sounds like he's probably going to play.
He's going to play.
Yeah, I was going to say I can't imagine the Eagles would even.
Hey, we could see Kenny Pickett. We could see Tanner McKee. Who knows?
Oh dear, I don't think anybody wants to see that in the NFC Championship. It's just like when Brock Purdy got injured with Sam.
Yeah, but I mean the 49ers had Josh Johnson and then they had McCaffrey taking direct snaps. I mean, Kenny Pickett has started in the NFL. And Tanner McKee, I mean, you saw him against Dallas. You saw him against the Giants. That guy could sling it.
Well, that's great for Tanner McKee, but this is the NFC Championship.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, it's
Kenny Pickett. Yes, Kenny Pickett has started plenty of NFL games. So
you saw him doing the tush push against Dallas.
Yeah.
Maybe Jalen Hurts is a system quarterback. No, I'm just saying that. I mean, if you remember when Gardner Minshew had to step in when Hurts got hurt a couple of years ago, and they lost that game against the Saints. I mean, Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts was playing in that game, they're not losing that game. Jalen Hurts beats up on the Saints. I don't think he's ever lost to the Saints in his career.
Yes, if you remember when Washington and Philadelphia last played in December, I think it was the first week of December. That's the game that Hurts got injured in.
Yeah, and it was Kenny Pickett
protocol.
Mm-hmm.
What if Philly wins that game? Because then all of a sudden, the entire 1-seed battle with the Lions could have changed, and honestly, another loss on the Commanders' record would have, probably made them the 7th seed, and then they would have had Philly in the first round or Detroit in the first round.
Yeah,
things could have changed, but regardless, they don't care, and nobody cares about that. Those were all hypotheticals. So,
which we love to do.
We love to play that game. So look, the Eagles have, in my opinion, the best running back in the league this season overall. I really believe it. And they don't need Jalen Hurts necessarily to be at 100% to win this football game. They don't. If Saquon Barkley goes for over 125 yards this weekend, which he's very capable of doing, the Commanders are going to have a really tough time winning this football game because just like last week against Detroit, while I think they can keep it close now with Philadelphia, I have belief in this team. It's just going to come down to, can they win the turnover battle and can they keep up offensively? Because against this Eagles defense, which is much healthier and much deeper than the Lions have been, it's a tall order. And that's the only way I think they're going to be able to keep themselves in this football game. But I hope, because you know how I feel about Philadelphia as a whole, as a sports city.
Of course.
I would much rather see Washington go off to the Super Bowl and keep this underdog type narrative going. But regardless, as we're going to get to in a second, the AFC Championship, you're going to have a tough challenge waiting there regardless.
It's very true. It's very true. So who do you think wins this game? I mean, I'm guessing you're leaning towards, I'm leaning towards the Eagles. The Eagles are the better team. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Like,
look, it's a, I believe it's is it still a 5.5 point spread?
I think it's 6.5.
Oof, wow, we're going up.
See, my thing is this though, like the Commanders are going to be going up against a better defense. So you're not going to get away with some of the things you got away with, against the Lions and against the Buccaneers. I mean, Philadelphia, like I said, every team has done a good job in not turning the ball over. So, whether it's this game or the next game we talk about, it could be whoever blinks first, whoever turns the ball over first. That can make the difference in these games. I feel like Jalen Hurts is going to have to make more plays through the air because we really have not seen a whole lot of Devontae Smith. We haven't seen a whole lot of A.J. Brown. Certainly A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's reading a book on the sidelines 2 weeks ago against Green Bay.
Which quickly became the most famous book in Philadelphia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I feel like you're going to have to get those guys involved at some point because maybe Saquon Barkley, goes through a little bit of a cold spell during the game or something, which I don't think is really going to happen. But let's just say that does happen. And, Washington is moving the ball, not like they were against the Lions, but they are, putting up points. And, you got to make some throws. Now, they didn't have Dallas Goedert in the last matchup. So getting him back for this game, I mean, I know he's played in the playoffs, but I'm just saying having him in this game helps. He's an underrated tight end. And I think Jalen Hurts can make plays with his arm, but we got to see that. I just think overall, Eagles are the better team here. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. The Commanders, like you said, they're coming in house money. They got nothing to lose. I think there's more pressure on Jalen Hurts and the Eagles to get the win here. But I think with them being at home too, I just like them in the spot. I think they win a relatively close game and they get back to the Super Bowl. And maybe Saquon Barkley takes one to the house to cement it like he did, against the Rams. Even though the Rams did make it close at the end. But that's kind of how I see it going.
They really did. I mean, look, like I said, the Eagles have certainly played close enough ball games to, make you believe to take Washington with the points. I mean, and I think that's the direction I'm leaning spread wise. I think Washington could cover the 6.5, but the Eagles top to bottom are on paper the better team in this matchup. They are, and they should be a Super Bowl worthy team. I think even if they were going up against the Lions, they still certainly would give the Lions a good run for their money regardless. I think that would have been more exciting to see.
Eagles. Yeah, I was really hoping for that. I think at this point the Eagles probably would have won.
I would have said the same thing probably. If Detroit snuck by, it's like, well, they didn't do enough defensively, but regardless, Washington is in the spot now. And as you said, it is the house money spot. This is the classic, like, we're here when we should have been, and we're going to try and take every advantage of the opportunity. I'm just curious to see, too. We saw a lot in that Detroit game. And in general, Dan Quinn is just as aggressive almost as Dan Campbell is. Fourth down situations are going to be a big turning point in this entire game. If the Commanders can't cash in on fourth down opportunities, they're toast. They are, because, like I said, every possession is going to be very important for Washington in this football game. And if you're down in the red zone and you're thinking, okay, early on, it's like a 7-0 ball game and you got a 4th and 1 at like the 18, those are going to be the types of decisions where it's going to say, are we going to, take 3 points at this point of the game being early on, or are we just going to be aggressive the entire time? And that's why I think both sides of the ball, if Washington can contain Saquon Barkley and make Jalen Hurts throw the ball more, like you said, because A.J. Brown has been invisible basically in both of the Eagles' playoff games so far. He hasn't done much of anything. If they contain Saquon and make Jalen Hurts throw through the air, this is going to be a very intense, competitive football game. And on the other side, if Washington can't cash in on those offensive opportunities, it could quickly become one-way traffic. It could. That's just the way I see this game shaping up. I mean, Eagles probably win somewhere between 3 and 7, somewhere between that, if I had to guess. The Philly home field advantage is also just very helpful. I mean, as much as I despise Eagles fans and think they're some of the most toxic people in all of the NFL, they're dedicated. I mean, I've seen news packages and stories of, the reporters out at the link at like 6 a.m. and, I forget which game it was. It was one of the Sunday night games that Philly had there this year. But, there's a guy with like a full smoker on the back of his truck, just, starting to grill some barbecue at 6 a.m. and the game's 14 hours away.
Yeah.
Like, as bad as Philly fans could be, they are some of the most dedicated, most passionate fans in all sports. So being at the link definitely makes a huge difference in this game. And you also have a feeling, Kenny, that being a rookie quarterback, and that regardless, as much of a dream ride as this is in some ways for Washington, this is still a new first for Jayden Daniels. Every game just gets more and more intense with the magnitude of importance. I'm excited to see how he handles the pressure based off of what he's done so far in this postseason, but I'm just starting to wonder if this might be the breaking point for being a young quarterback in a team that's had to work really hard to get here. But regardless, Washington has proved that they belong here in this football game, and I think it should be very exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. So now we are going to transition into the later game, the second of 2 games on Championship Sunday, and this is the one that everybody is amped up about. Now, again, no disrespect to the NFC Championship game. That's going to be a good game, but this is the game that everybody is circling. And that is the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes once again squaring off. This is now the 4th time in the last 5 years now that they have matched up in the playoffs. I think that's right. And for the Bills and Josh Allen, they've gotten the best of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the regular season, including this year. They handed the Chiefs their first loss. But in the postseason, it's different because Patrick Mahomes is 3-0. against Josh Allen, and that includes last year's game, which was in Orchard Park. Chiefs win that game 27-24. Tyler Bass misses the potential game-tying field goal. Bills go home. Chiefs advance to the championship game. They win the Super Bowl, and they're going for a three-peat. I think going into this weekend, the quarterback that is under the most pressure is Josh Allen. Josh Allen needs this game because this game right here, if the Bills are able to pull off a win here, that would do wonders for him because there are only two individuals that have been able to knock off Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. One of them is now an analyst and will be calling the Super Bowl in New Orleans. That's Tom Brady, and he did it twice. And the other is Joe Burrow, who didn't even make the playoffs this year. Now, excluding the Super Bowl when Brady won with the Bucs against the Chiefs, the AFC Championship games, it took Joe Burrow and Tom Brady everything. They had to go to overtime to knock off Mahomes. And it could be the same thing here. Because if you remember from, a couple years ago, we witnessed one of the greatest playoff games ever between Mahomes and Josh Allen, that 42-36 marathon. Mahomes wins in overtime. The Bills went ahead at the very end with 13 seconds left, and somehow the Chiefs get into field goal range, partly because they had all three of their timeouts left, and the Bills, I don't know, the way they set up their defense on that final possession before overtime was not the right way, because they just let the Chiefs get yardage in the middle of the field because they were guarding the sidelines. And that's part of the reason why, that is the reason why the rules for overtime in the playoffs changed. So now we get to this game, and like I said, this is a huge game for Josh Allen. He is under the most pressure. He has to go in there and win this game, because if not, it's going to be like what Lamar Jackson is dealing with now after losing yet another playoff game early and dealing with another early playoff exit. You're going to deal with the same thing, because it's going to be like, you simply cannot beat the Chiefs. And I give them a puncher's chance to win this game, maybe more than that, because the Bills and the Chiefs, they've matched up so many times that they know each other well. It's just going to be very tough. It's going to be in Kansas City. Like I said, very few have been able to knock off Mahomes in this spot. And Mahomes never lost in the divisional round. He's in the AFC Championship game once again. He's been in it every year since he's became a starter for the Chiefs, which is unbelievable. Josh Allen has done a great job at not turning the ball over this year. That's why, part of the reason why he's up for MVP this year as well. Patrick Mahomes, the numbers aren't spectacular this year, but you know what? It's the playoffs. Things are different. They turn it up. Now, they didn't really have to turn it up last week offensively against the Texans because the defense did most of the work. And, you also had the Texans' mishaps on special teams. So Mahomes didn't have to be spectacular to win that game. But here, I think both quarterbacks are going to have to play up to their standard. I think this is a game that we could potentially see being high scoring. I don't know if we're going to see 42-36 again, but maybe we see something close to that. I'm really looking forward to this game. Again, it could be one of those games where who blinks first, who turns the ball over first. That can make all the difference. If I'm the Bills, if you get the ball first, you get the ball first, and you take it down the field, and you get 7 right away. For the Chiefs, they have that championship pedigree. They got a lot of guys on that side that have that experience in these games. For the Bills, who is going to be the guy to step up along with Josh Allen? Because Josh Allen's going to be, Josh Allen's going to do his thing. But from these other pass catchers, because we know the Chiefs have Kelsey and, Juju Smith-Schuster was on the team a couple years ago when they made it. And I know they don't have Rashee Rice because he got hurt, but you got DeAndre Hopkins, who's playing in his first conference championship game of his career. And, Xavier Worthy, their rookie, he's been playing well as of late. And, again, obviously we got Travis Kelsey, who's been there and done that. But who on the Bills is going to step up? Because you have Amari Cooper, who is kind of, hasn't really made much of an impact since he was brought over. You got Khalil Shakir, who's a good player. The tight ends, Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Curtis Samuel has made plays for them. Matt Collins, I believe he led the team in touchdown receptions this year. And then you got James Cook coming out of the backfield. I'm curious to see, who is going to be Josh Allen's go-to guy in this game. Who's going to step up? Because there's no Stephon Diggs, and you're not going to have Gabe Davis, scoring 4 touchdowns like he did in the playoff game a few years ago. So it's a whole new cast of characters. Now, Keon Coleman, I also forgot about the rookie wide receiver as well. It's going to be an interesting game. And can the Bills get pressure on Mahomes? Because the offensive line's kind of been a little bit of a concern with Kansas City as well. So it's going to be a tough game. I'm really looking forward to it. The problem is I just can't pick against Kansas City. I can't. because of the track record. And, it's just, I just can't do it. But I think it's going to be a close game. But if Josh Allen were to win this game, I wouldn't complain because I think he deserves it. I think as a fan, partly want to see something different. But you know what? If Mahomes wins, so be it. Go and get the three-peat because that's something we've never seen before. So, but I'm not like one of these people that's, like, oh, I hate the Chiefs. I mean, for me, yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit sick of seeing them every year, but you know what? They're great. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know that was a lot, but that's how I feel going into this game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, here we go again. Like you said, this is the fourth time in the past 5 years that the Chiefs and the Bills have faced each other. I believe this is the third AFC Championship, and the one other one was divisional, or are we at two divisional?
Two divisional, one AFC Championship game. The AFC Championship game that they played, the only one was the COVID season.
Okay, so it's about to be 2-2 then after this.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, this is the new playoff rivalry, really. Well, it's not new. It's just building upon what has already become a playoff rivalry. It's Josh Allen. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's Chiefs Bills. I mean, this is what the NFL, I think, wanted to see. This is what I think a lot of football fans were expecting. And here we are again. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting for Buffalo. If you're Josh Allen and you go 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes in the postseason, when are you ever going to beat the Chiefs? I mean, it's starting.
We said the same thing last year too.
Right. And I thought last year would finally be the year. I was like, this game in Buffalo, Bills had a really good season last year. The Chiefs started to look they were looking a little flat last year. Remember that? And that's the same narrative this year too. And then, all of a sudden, Tyler Bass, with the game on the line, misses that crucial field goal to potentially send it to overtime. But regardless, there was still a minute 40 on the clock. Who knows what Mahomes would have done anyways. The thing that the Kansas City Chiefs do so well is they find ways to win games. It's just, we have to accept that reality now. Andy Reid is a Hall of Fame coach. He will be a mortal lock. They could give him the freaking gold jacket this weekend for all I care. Win or loss. Because Andy Reid is just unbelievable. One of the best coaches that I think has been in this game the last 20 years. And what it's going to boil down to here is that, like you said, the Chiefs' defense was the star against the Texans last weekend in the divisional round. Now, they might have to kind of replicate that performance again because this is a Buffalo Bills team that certainly is explosive still. They've been doing it all season long without, a true number one wide receiver. I mean, the Bills have relied on guys like Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, and then in the Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, of course, they got from Cleveland. And then in the tight end department, you have Kincaid and Knox. It just really adds to the impressiveness of Josh Allen's season, which to me, I would be voting for him for MVP personally, but I can certainly see the argument for Lamar as well. I really do, but it's going to be a close race regardless. I'm curious to see what that vote tally will be. But as you said, Kenny, the pressure is all on Josh Allen this weekend, and it's not even close. Because, like I said, if you're 0-4 against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, it's going to get to the point where, remember when the Buffalo Bills lost those 4 Super Bowls from 88 to 91? Now it's almost kind of a similar type of situation where you lose 4 AFC championships. Well, 4 AFC playoff games in 5 years. The same opponent. It would be pretty painful. And, while I have said for weeks and weeks, I think I might have even said it on the show before the holidays, we were talking about these two. Like, I think the Bills have the best chance this year to beat the Chiefs because, again, I'm going to say it because I'm going to speak it into existence. As the public narrative is, the Chiefs aren't that good this year. They haven't been that good, but here they are. I mean, Patrick Mahomes didn't play great, really, in that opening game against Buffalo. I mean, he had the 3 touchdowns, but it was kind of outweighed by the 2 interceptions when these two met in the regular season. And Josh Allen in that game, he went 27-40 with 262 with a touchdown and an interception. He did have the one rushing touchdown as well. And once again, just like the Bills did against the Ravens this weekend, they won the turnover battle. While it was 2-1 in that regular season matchup, the Bills got 3 turnovers from the Ravens this past weekend. And I'm going to talk about the Ravens in just a second too, because they got to be mentioned. But I just don't know. I think this is going to be one of those late game situations again, where whoever has the ball last is going to win the football game. And I'm putting my faith in the Chiefs. I picked the Baltimore Ravens outright last year. And then 2 years ago, I picked the Bills, who were playing the Chiefs 2 years ago in this very situation. And I've been wrong both times. So I'm not going to screw up a third time. Until Patrick Mahomes gets taken down, I'm not picking against this football team. I'm done with it, And like I said, all that talk about, Chiefs aren't really that good. They've had so many lucky breaks this season. Who cares? Who cares? They went, they went 15-2 this season, and they're in the AFC Championship again for the 7th consecutive year. I mean, enough is enough. This is, I'm going to say it because I think it's true now. This is Brady's Patriots 2.0. It really is. We got to get used to it. I mean, as long as Andy Reid is in Kansas City as well, it's just going to help enhance this. And look at our old friend Steve Spagnuolo. Once again, doing this with another football team in the Chiefs. And like I said, I think from a betting perspective, the Chiefs are, I think, 1.5 point favorites. I love that number for Kansas City. Anything under 3, I love that. It's going to be a great football game regardless. Like you said, 42-36, no, don't think that's happening again. But somewhere in the neighborhood of 28-24 is probably something more of your football score, 27-24, something like that. I just think that the Chiefs find ways to win football games, and this is another one of those situations where they're just going to show up defensively, especially. I mean, George Karlaftis had the 3 sacks against Houston, so watch out for him. Spags is never afraid to dial up pressure. And so I just think the Chiefs are going to find a way in the end to win this football game. But like I said, this is all on Josh Allen, this pressure. I mean, if he loses yet again in this game, this is finally going to be the realization that the Chiefs own the Bills in the playoffs. I mean, you could already say that technically with 3 losses, but a 4th one would just solidify the argument that the Chiefs do own the Bills in the postseason. And that's where it would be. Regardless, whoever wins this game is a well-deserving Super Bowl team. And like I said, I don't think it's as much of, do I really like the Chiefs? No. I mean, I'm starting to get a little sick of it myself, but this team's just really good. And they know how to win football games. And that builds championship pedigree and really brings your team together in those types of moments. And for the real diehard Chiefs fans, if you do go back to the Super Bowl, it's the luckiness of the Hallmark movie helped.
I got you.
But let me just get
the Ravens, right?
Yes, I wanted to get to the Ravens quick too, okay? And I'm sure you'll have your thoughts on this. I almost considered picking Baltimore against Buffalo in that divisional game, which, by the way, I think it was the best game of the weekend. I do.
Yeah. 3 out of the 4 games were really good.
Yeah, honestly, there really wasn't, there wasn't a lot of...
Chiefs-Texans was the only one that I just didn't do it for me. The only thing that I took away from that was just the bad penalties that were thrown in the game.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, okay? The narrative too of the Chiefs getting the calls. I mean, yes, that's definitely, I think, a part of the football games now. But is it really that much more of a difference than what Brady got with the Patriots? Or some of these other greats? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just because the Chiefs are under such a magnifying glass right now, and we're in this new era of the NFL without Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Ben Roethlisberger and Eli Manning and Drew Brees and so on and so forth. Maybe
Take me back.
I mean, maybe it's just because everybody just actively watches the Chiefs to either hate watch or they're actual fans of the team. And well, the Chiefs are also just in these big time games anyways. But I agree. They definitely had some generous calls, very generous calls against Houston. I mean, we can't deny it. But at the same time, I think the referee talk is starting to get a little over the top because all the comments that I've seen on social this week is just about, well, once again, the refs versus the Bills, and how many championships have the Chiefs won with help from the refs? It's like, yeah, okay, I guess. I mean, but it's all part of the game. I mean, people got to understand that. Even though I'm not trying to stick up for the Chiefs in any way, I want to make that clear, okay? But look,
I don't know, people. I don't know, Ben. People are starting to click off.
The refs always lean this way, visual wise, okay, toward the left. If the Chiefs are on the left side, they're leaning toward the Chiefs. They are, okay. But I don't know. It's just I don't know how to feel about the whole situation. It's definitely very it's a very touchy subject. So I mean, look, you can say what you want, but I think regardless, like the throw that Mahomes made to Kelsey against the Texans was also just stupid, like literally stupid.
The touchdown, right?
Yes, and while everybody quickly forgets about that to talk about the refs, it's like Patrick Mahomes is still making world-class plays that I don't think a lot of people truly appreciate because, once again, a lot of people hate the Chiefs. And like I said, I mean, it's the Taylor Swift effect, man. I'm telling you, maybe that's part of it too. Maybe, hey, you guys want a conspiracy theory? This will make the media go crazy, even though it won't get out there because we just have our, 10 people listening to this. What if Taylor Swift is paying off the refs to help the Chiefs? Mind blown, right? Maybe that's the next conspiracy theory with this football team.
Well, you saw Caitlin Clark was also there too, right? Sitting next to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Big Chiefs fan.
I know. And, there was some speculation going around too that, Taylor Swift was wearing a glove and everybody is like, oh my God, what if they're engaged? It's like, guys, like, give me a break. It's like, what are we doing? It's ridiculous that we're even thinking of that stuff. But yeah, so I guess Caitlin Clark's a Chiefs fan. But I guess when you're in Iowa, why would you want to bother rooting for Chicago? Even though I think Iowa's technically just a little bit closer to Chicago, you might as well just hop on the Kansas City bandwagon. What the heck? Why not? But anyway,
so the Ravens, though.
To avoid me from still rambling on, let's go back to Bills-Ravens, okay? I want to hear your thoughts on this football game because I certainly have some.
Oh, so now you want to hear my thoughts?
I do. So that way,
throwing it back at me. All right.
So that way, the listeners don't keep clicking off for me talking for another 12 minutes. So please,
that's all right. It's all right. We're both guilty. I mean, it really just came down to turnovers. Lamar Jackson turned the ball over twice in the first half, put them behind, and then played really well in the second half. And then you had Mark Andrews, the fumble that I believe led to points. Yeah, led to a field goal. And then, well, even like the first interception that Lamar had, or the first turnover that Lamar had, didn't result in anything, Bills-wise. I mean, maybe the Ravens would have got points out of it, but regardless, the fumble in the first half really killed them because then the Bills, I think, turned that into a touchdown. I thought the Ravens made a statement, first drive of the game, they went right down the field, but then the Bills answered. But yeah, Lamar put them behind with the turnovers, and then Mark Andrews fumbles, and then, you have the play that everybody's talking about where, Lamar hits Mark Andrews and he drops the ball. Now, Chris Sims was talking about it on the Kay Adams show. He said that Lamar should have threw the ball sooner. Regardless, you got to catch that. You got to catch that ball. It's right in your hands. And I think that really made the difference. Josh Allen, you look at the box score, the numbers don't jump out at you, but he did enough and the team did enough to get the win. And, it's going to be like if Josh Allen loses this weekend, Lamar Jackson is hearing about it, how they're coming up short. The Ravens are still a really good team. It's just things didn't go their way. They got to keep going at it. I mean, they're going to try to extend Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry was unbelievable. If it wasn't for Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry would be up for Offensive Player of the Year. I think Saquon Barkley's getting that award. He's the best running back in football. Like you said, I agree with that 100%. But Derrick Henry's right there. Those two guys put running backs back on the map. And Derrick Henry, I think being with the Ravens, he's still got gas left in the tank. And I think he's still got a couple good years left in them. So they got him. I think you need to add another weapon to that offense and, continue to improve this defense. The defense played better towards the end of the year, but I think you need to add, more to that, whether it's an edge rusher, maybe guys in the secondary and what have you. This team is still really good. It's just they weren't at home. I think if maybe they were in Baltimore for that game against the Bills, it goes differently, but that's what happens, and they lost some games that maybe they shouldn't have. They lose to the Raiders early on in the season. You dropped that game to Pittsburgh when Chris Boswell kicked 6 field goals. It's just a couple of things here or there go your way, and then maybe you're looking at it differently. But then, you look at last year. Last year could have been the year, and they had the 1 seed. They had home field advantage, and the Chiefs went in there and they beat them. So it's tough right now for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. But ultimately, I think for me, the biggest thing was it came down to turnovers, why they lost the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really hit the nail right on the head with everything. It was the turnovers. I mean, now we start to look more at Lamar Jackson under the microscope as well. I mean, he's 3-5 now, all time in the postseason. 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, just over a 60% completion percentage, I believe. But the one that kills you is the 6 lost fumbles in 8 playoff games. I mean, that's really unacceptable. It can't happen. And I thought for sure, I was like, okay, well, the Ravens have a really good chance at the Bills, and they did. This turned out to be a really exciting football game. But think what it was in the first half. I mean, after because the Ravens had 2 of the turnovers, I think, came in the first half, I believe. So
you had the interception, and then you had the fumble, which Damar Hamlin, I got charged with the fumble and the sack, I guess, but Lamar Jackson just dropped the ball.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
It was more of that, and then Von Miller recovered it.
Yeah,
but they had the 2 turnovers in the first half. Buffalo cashes in really both times. It's 21-10 at the half. At that point, you're thinking because I believe Buffalo did get the ball out of half too, and it's like, boy, this could really turn to a big hole. And then all of a sudden, the Ravens defense really, steps up to the plate and holds the Bills to 2 field goals in the second half and 3 punts. They really threw them off their game offensively, and that allowed them to kind of creep their way back in. But the Mark Andrews fumble was an absolute killer. I thought for sure if Andrews doesn't fumble there, I think the Ravens go down and take the lead. I really do, because they look like they were starting to turn.
No, I agree. I agree 100%.
But you're right. Regardless, the 2-point conversion, I mean, Mark Andrews absolutely has to catch that ball 10 out of 10 times. I don't know if you saw this on social this week, but the Bills donated $36,000 to
I did see that.
Andrews. I think it's a cancer charity that he runs.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
But I mean, look, it's funny because the Bills have had a history of doing that too. Like they donated to Tyler Bass's charity last year. They did it to Tua, I think, after one of his concussions. I mean, it's interesting that the Bills have done that. I mean, nice gestures for sure, regardless. Helping out the people who had some bad moments in the playoffs. But yeah, the turnovers killed the Ravens. I think, is it crazy to say, Kenny, that the Ravens probably should have won this football game? I don't think it's crazy to say that.
I mean, I think if they don't turn the ball over, absolutely.
I mean, because there was never truly, I mean, outside the first half, the Bills really did show up in the first half, and then the second half, they couldn't get much of anything going. And you just thought you were waiting for the Ravens to have that definitive drive, and Lamar marches down the field and leads it to a go ahead score. And really, this is
I mean, the drive to tie the game was that. It's just they didn't finish it off because Andrews dropped the 2-point conversion.
Yeah. And, Mark Andrews is certainly taking a lot of this blame for good reason after losing this one. So, I mean, yeah, this is back-to-back years of the Ravens losing really close competitive games in the playoffs. And this is the first one with Derrick Henry. I mean, I think there's a lot more to look forward to in the future for this football team, but playoff Lamar hasn't really been the greatest in these moments. And, the Ravens do have quite a few questions to answer going into next season regardless. So, but, here we are again. I mean, Bills, Chiefs in the AFC, and then Commanders, Eagles in the NFC. I'm really looking forward to these 2 games for sure this weekend. 4 well-deserving teams to be in these spots.
Yeah, I agree as well. They should be 2 very highly entertaining games, I hope. And I think we both agree we're both picking the Chiefs and the Eagles. So if that's the case, we are going to get a repeat of what we had a couple of years ago, which that was a good Super Bowl. 38-35, the Chiefs won. So, it's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be the Kelsey Bowl. Jason Kelsey's no longer there. You got Saquon now running the football. No Kadarius Toney either in this Super Bowl either. So
and you remember too, I think, didn't Jalen Hurts have 3 rushing touchdowns in that game too?
I think so.
Because I think I remember he became the first quarterback.
I think you might be right. I know he threw a touchdown to AJ Brown. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right because
Yeah,
I think
something
two
like
out of the three were tush pushes, and one of them was
Yeah.
an actual rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
Mahomes had 3 touchdowns in that game. He had one to Sky Moore, one to Tony, and he also had one to Kelsey, I think, on their first drive. That was a good Super Bowl. So you know what? I know it's something we saw already, but I mean, be a good Super Bowl if we get Chiefs Eagles.
It would. I mean, two very, explosive teams offensively and two really good defensive fronts.
Yeah.
Really.
Yep.
I mean, it would be great. And especially seeing, Sirianni against Andy Reid again. Andy Reid versus the Eagles again on this stage would be something exciting too. But we're not there yet. We got to get through this weekend and cherish every second this weekend, everybody, because
we got 3 games left.
We're down to the final 3 already. Another season is rapidly coming to a close, and here we are again. And maybe in the future, which Roger Goodell keeps saying, the NFL might go to 18 games.
Oh, they're going to. They're going to.
It's gonna. Of course they will, because it's all about the money. Of course.
Right. Yeah. And then once that's over, we get to start talking about baseball season.
Can you believe that we're only 4 weeks, I think, till pitchers and catchers?
Yeah, it's coming up.
Here we go.
We're just teasing that. We're not going to ramble on for another hour about baseball because we'll be here all night.
No, we won't.
But yeah, any last things before we wrap up?
No, just that I'm excited for these 2 games this weekend. There's just something about the aura of the last games of the season in the NFL that just make it that much more exciting and special. I mean, this is the king of professional sports, folks. I mean, if you don't think the NFL runs the entire show, then you're crazy, because this is without a doubt the #1 sport in America.
And listen, I agree. So yeah, that's pretty much it from us two. Enjoy the games this weekend. What is Championship Sunday again? In one more time.
Yes, that's right. I lost it already. This is the problem. Hang on.
I know I keep putting you on the spot. That's my apologies.
Okay, a terrible wrap up here. It is Domingo de Campeonato.
Yes, so enjoy that on Sunday, the 2 championship games. And as always, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder along with Ben Upson signing off. Infinite Sports, another episode in the books. Have a good one, and we will talk to you guys next time.